And we're live with Andy Bannister, one of my favorite, most charming, most intelligent, you can tell by the books in his background, evangelist apologist. Wow, what a mouthful that was.
I'm amazed, Sarah, you got that all out.
Where are you coming to us from today? Just tell us where you're at.
Opposite the country, because you're in, I presume, in sunny Cornwall. I'm in sunny Scotland. It's 21 degrees here. That is a heat wave. So I'm in Dundee in Scotland at the north of the UK.
And Americans, don't worry, it's not 21 degrees Fahrenheit. It is 21 degrees Celsius. Obviously, we're targeting this for the audience that were in the UK. Yeah. Everyone's going to have to do the math for a second, Andy. Now, Andy, you are both the leader for Solas, which is an amazing ministry, but also an adjunct for Ravi Zacharias International Ministries. And we just had the huge news yesterday that Ravi has gone home, and would just love for you to share with anyone who might be tuning in and joining us who Ravi was, what his legacy was, why that's important news.
Oh my words, try and cram that into a short answer, Sarah. Yeah, so for folks who are unfamiliar with Ravi Zacharias, Ravi probably was one of the sort of major influences, I think, in terms of bringing some intellectual rigor to the Christian faith in the last few decades. Born in India and then moved to North America, he was an evangelist, a communicator, somebody who really believed in connecting the Christian faith, Sarah, both the head and the heart. And so, his talks, his lectures, his videos, really deep in terms of the spiritual and biblical material, but also really connected to the culture and the mind. And many, many thousands, tens of thousands of people over the sort of 40 years of his ministry have come to faith in Christ through the way God used Ravi. But also his other legacy, Sarah, is the Christians he trained up and equipped. Some people are sort of like a comet blazing a trail across the sky at the end and they fizzle out. But Ravi built this incredible team. I came into this form of work through Ravi's friendship and encouragement and mentorship, and he leaves behind a team of 100 men and women in dozens of countries around the world who with a passion for Jesus and the message of the gospel, commitment to answer the toughest questions of the age, but to do that in a way that's generous and engaging and responds to people. Sadly we lost Ravi yesterday, has gone home to be with Jesus. Really, the hope all of us who loved him have is we know where he's gone. But we still miss him, and so we're praying for his family and his colleagues around the world. So for folks who don't know him, go to the RZIM website, RZIM or RZIM for any passing Americans.org, and you can read about him, find out what he got up to, who he was if you don't know that, and all of his videos and materials are online to watch, as is the stuff his colleagues have put together. So tremendous legacy he's left us.
Absolutely. And obviously slightly unusual way to start a conversation by nodding to someone who's no longer with us. But I think Ravi's life has had such a significant impact. And in so many ways, it kind of plays into this whole question that we're going to talk about today. Can you find hope in a coronavirus world? Because I think in so many ways, we're all being brought face to face with our own mortality and just asking those questions. So let's just lead off with a fairly simple question. Is there such a thing as hope during this season that we're in? And what does it look like to find that hope?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing, Sarah, is I think coronavirus has done a number of things, a number of fascinating things. It's stripped away a lot of things that people were placing their hope in that haven't worked. So a lot of us, and not just non-Christians, but even Christians, I think, have fallen into the trap of perhaps placing our hope in our jobs, our bank balances, our standard of living, just the regular, comfortable certainties of life. We knew what everything was like and what life was. It was easy. It was all beautiful and set up, especially for us in the West. And of course, lots of coronavirus, it knocks that down like a load of 10-pin Skittles. And, many people have been, out of work. They're struggling to pay the bills. They don't know what the future is going to hold. And so all of those uncertainties have gone. And that's forced people to ask big questions. And I've been fascinated to see that trend developing. So there was a recent report in The Guardian, a very secular newspaper here in the UK, reporting that I think in the last month, 25% of Brits, and we're a pretty secular nation, have checked into a religious service. Get this, though, for 18 to 34-year-olds, it's 33%. 1 in 3. I love sort of stand-up comedy, and one of my sort of favorite sort of off-the-wall comedians, Russell Brand, very eccentric comedian. He's been doing a series of podcasts with getting millions of views in the last few weeks, looking at spirituality. He did one the other day on why everyone's Googling prayer. Now, Russell is in all kinds of places. He certainly hasn't found Jesus, but I think he's tapping into something. And I see this everywhere. And so I think people are looking for hope. The things that we looked for, hope in, have failed, and we're looking for something different. And I think the Christian, of course, I'd say in all of this is, look, the Christian message, the gospel message of Jesus for 2,000 years has always been, look, these other things, career, money, success, certainty, family, comforts, those are all good. They're good things. God gave us those things. But if you try and make those the ultimate thing, then you're going to be ultimately disappointed. And actually, the only thing that can give us true certainty, true confidence, true identity, true security, true hope is a relationship with the God who made us through Jesus Christ. And I think sometimes it's in moments of crisis that it's easier to discover that than when we're distracted by the noise and the trinkets and the buzz of everyday life.
I've been fascinated by the Russell Brand journey as well, and I've just been following along with his videos, which we obviously have to endorse with a little bit of a disclaimer. But it does feel like there's a new era of searching that's happening, and that the questions that people are asking are perhaps a little bit deeper than they would have before, or they're acknowledging those deeper questions. And so, Andy, I'd love to just ask, what does it look like for us to respond really practically to those deeper questions? And particularly if someone's tuned in today and they're asking, okay, we believe that hope is found in something, but I don't know how to articulate that well. What are some of the ways that we can equip ourselves to speak about this hope?
Well, let me say one thing first, Sarah. I think for anybody watching this who's thinking about these big questions, I always think it's worth doing compare and contrast. And look, if we live in a godless universe, if there is nothing more than just the material, then we have a number of issues. Firstly, there is no hope to be found. I hate to be bleak, there simply isn't any. You will die, quite frankly. That's the end for all of us, and that's it. Might be through coronavirus tomorrow, might be through a car crash next week, it might be cancer in your 80s. Furthermore, if we live in a godless universe and all that exists are the blind forces of time and chance and natural selection, then the coronavirus is presumably a good thing, actually. It's coming along, it's weeding out the weak and the elderly and the sickly. It's basically strengthening the herd through getting rid of those who are weak. It's Darwinianism in all of its beautiful glory. Interestingly, we haven't responded like that as a society, right? We've said, no, we need to look after the weak and we need to shelter the elderly. And the rest of us, we can jolly well lock up. We need to be locked up. We're going to crash our economies. We're going to bring everything down around our ears to protect the ones who biologically are the weakest. But my word, that's a Christian answer. And it only makes sense if Christianity is true. Now the question for anyone watching is going, well, how do I know if Christianity is true? It's certainly more attractive, and our society is revealing its Christian roots in the way we're responding. Well, to me, the most straightforward answer here, Sarah, is that people need to take a very good look at the person of Jesus. Right now, a lot of us have got time. We've got time on our hands. We can't do the things we would normally do. What an incredible opportunity to get hold of a Bible, either an old-fashioned print copy. Maybe there's one sitting on a shelf covered in dust. You haven't looked at it since you were a teenager. Or you've got a sort of slightly battered one like mine that I've used for ages. Or go online, go to something like Bible Gateway. Or on your phone, pull up a Bible app, just in Bible into your app store on Google or Android, and go to one of the Gospels, one of the 4 biographies of Jesus of Nazareth, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they're called, and take a read. Read Mark's Gospel, 16 chapters long. You can read it in an evening. And as you do, begin asking yourself the question, who does Jesus think he is? Who's he claiming to be? And what would I need to see to be convinced of? And maybe as well, you can pray, it's been affectionately called down the years, the seeker's prayer, which is you look at the Bible and you look at these big questions, be praying, look, God, I don't even know if you exist. I have got no idea, but I want to know. I really, really want to know. Would you lead me to the truth if you're real? And, Russell Brand, we mentioned, it's interesting, right? He's onto something. Everyone's Googling prayer. And Jesus famously said, if you seek, you will find. And I do believe that if you pursue those questions, look into Jesus with that open, searching heart, not gullible, asking the questions and saying why and how do I know and all those kind of things, then I think many people, that's been how they've started a journey to finding true hope and peace in Christ.
And if hope is kind of our theme for today, and what you've just invited us to is just to look at the person and the work of Jesus Christ as found in those Gospels, which is a very good place to start, then how does the life of Christ speak to us particularly about hope? What about his life sets apart a new message?
Well, I think there's a couple of things going on straight away, Sarah. Firstly, of course, the heart of the message of Jesus is that we are designed for something. As human beings, we're not just random collections of atoms. We're built and designed for something, for a purpose. And that purpose is to enjoy a close relationship with the God who made us. And Jesus offered to be able to bring us back into that relationship. The message of Jesus, the message of the Bible, is that actually we're separated from the God who loved us by our self-centeredness, by our tendency to look for hope and purpose in all the wrong things. And Jesus came to put that relationship right. And when you start living the way that you're intended to do, then life is going to go so much better. In the same way that a fish was designed to swim, it's going to have a much more filled life in a pond than sitting on a snooker table. You and I are designed for a relationship with God. We're going to find it much easier to deal with all the things that life throws at us when we're living as we're intended to. And Jesus talks a lot about that. And secondly, of course, the heart of the message of Jesus too is that this life, it's not all that there is. Yes, it matters. Christians are not people who believe in pie in the sky when you die and we can ignore this earthly world. This world matters because God made it. But it is just the beginning. I mentioned, Ravi at the start. Those of us who love him and counted him as a friend and a colleague, yeah, we're sad we miss our friend, but we're not despairing because Jesus also said there will be a resurrection and that those who trust in God through him will know eternal life and enjoy eternal life. And of course, Jesus didn't just merely promise that, he demonstrated that when he himself rose from the grave 3 days later on that first Easter Sunday morning. And, one of the most powerful pieces of evidence for me, I'm a thinking type, I need evidence for the claims of the Christian faith and of Jesus, is the evidence for resurrection. It's just absolutely overwhelming. So the message of Jesus, what we're designed to be, relationship with God, and then that hope beyond the grave, beyond the physical, demonstrated the very concrete fact of the resurrection.
And you and I are both passionate about this word resurrection, which if you're tuning in and you're not from a church background, it's kind of one of those words that immediately feels a little bit like you need a degree to understand what it is. And there's a book that you and I both have read, may not agree with all the conclusions of, but it's called Surprised by Hope. And I love the way that the resurrection is described in those terms. So just unpack for us, why does the resurrection cause us to be surprised by hope? What about it particularly catches us a bit off guard and is better than we ever might have dared to imagine?
Well, of course, I love that. Yeah, I love that book, and I love the title of Tom Wright's book. They're surprised by hope, and of course, the surprise part, Sarah, is actually interesting, right? Because when you read the Gospels and you read those Easter stories there and those 4 biographies of Jesus, what's interesting is that the disciples, his followers, after he'd been arrested and tortured and subjected to mockery of a trial by the Romans and then killed on a Roman cross, they thought it was all over. They thought that was the end. And, first century history was littered with people who claimed to be the Jewish Messiah, who got into trouble with the Romans, killed, it was all over. And you read those accounts of, particularly the women going to the tomb on that Easter Sunday morning, really expecting to just, anoint a dead body with some spices and weep and mourn his graveside, and suddenly, bang, encountering I love that surprise by hope. There's tremendous hope that actually, the man they loved and followed wasn't dead, but was actually risen from the grave. And also, of course, in rising from the grave, all of those claims he made about himself to be so much more than just a human teacher to be demonstrated. So the Christian message begins with hope and surprise. And then I think for all of us, something I found for myself, I think when I put my hope in Christ all those decades ago, the same thing happened. Because look, we live in a world that tells us we're just material beings. Our only purpose is to survive and reproduce. The best you can hope for is the 9 to 5, paying off the mortgage, maybe a slightly nicer car on the drive and a foreign holiday. In fact, all of those have gone now because we can't travel abroad. And then you get to retirement, and then maybe you'll live to another 15 or 25 years, play a couple of rounds of golf, keel over, and that's it. I can't think of anything more depressing if that is the very, very best that the world has to offer. But along comes the Christian faith and says, actually, no. Oh my word, no. There is so much more than that. That is just, a tiny, tiny taste of what life is about. It is much bigger than that. And I think when I became a Christian, I sort of thought it was something to do with sort of enjoying a relationship with God and going to heaven when I died. But I suddenly discovered, no, it gives life purpose and meaning and hope and joy. And even when life out there is in chaos, even when we're all locked up and coronavirus is going on, this overwhelming joy that bubbles up in you when you are a Christian, because you have that incredible relationship with God, a God who loves you so much. He did what he did for us in Jesus. And you have a hope and a certainty that actually there is a future, even when the present's looking in chaos. The Christian faith, I think, has got hope written all over it. And most importantly, Sarah, I don't have hope anywhere else. There's no hope in atheism. In fact, there's no hope in any of the other religious traditions of the world. We haven't got time to go into this now, but my PhD is actually in Islamic studies. I've been studying the Quran for 20, 25 years. And one of the things that I really noticed when I studied Islam to academic level, there's no hope in the Quran. It really is a hopeless faith. It offers a few things, but not hope. Hope is unique to the Christian faith. Christians are people, actually men and women, whose lives are marked by hope, even when the world is in chaos.
I think one of my most significant faith kind of penny drop moments was that moment when I realized that if the resurrection is really true, if Christ has really conquered death, then there's no other obstacle that even comes close to holding weight. Because the reality is that the great barrier of all of our souls is this fear of death and what happens afterwards, and that the beauty of the resurrected Jesus speaks a hope, not just to our life today, but also to our life eternally. So if there's someone who's tuning in today and they've said, great, I've heard all of this, what do I do with this? What's the invitation that we want to give? Yeah.
Well, I'd say, Sarah, as we wrap this up, I guess there's, very quickly, three types of person I want to address. If you're, a Christian watching this, really encourage you just to really, as Sarah and I have just shared, get a grip on just the incredible hope that's there in the Christian faith. That doesn't get you excited. Take a fresh look at Jesus and get yourself excited. And then ask yourself the question, pray, Lord, who can I share that hope with today? Yes, we're locked down, but we can still talk to people. You still see your neighbours. You still chat to the postman and delivery driver, people you meet at work, people you meet in your socially distanced walk. Don't hope to yourself if you're a Christian. Second, if you're a skeptic and you're like, this is great, I'm intrigued, or I wouldn't be watching this, but I've still got questions. My challenge to you is, what are you doing to find the answer to those questions? Honest skepticism is fine. Dishonest skepticism, when you're just hiding behind it, isn't. So if you've got a question, an objection, some aspect of the Christian faith or Jesus you're not sure about, find the answer to the question. There's great resources on the Creation Fest website, or come to the SOLAS website. You'll see the URL in the corner of my screen. We have a series of videos there called Short Answers. Probably any question you've got about the Christian faith, we've probably got something to help you get that question answered. But there's a third type of person watching, I suspect, which is, you've been thinking about this for a while, you've been sneakily watching along to Christian videos and not telling anybody. You're one of those 25%, or if you're 18, 34, 33%, the Guardian picked up on. There's something that's drawing you, and you maybe know you've got to do something about this. You get a nagging sense. And that may well just be Jesus tapping you on the shoulder and going, come on, my friend, when are you actually going to stop just messing around and thinking about it and actually do something about it? Because the Christian faith is not an intellectual thing, it's a trust exercise. It's the point at which you want to say, okay, Jesus, I'm willing to lay down my life and give that to you and trust you. For the third type of person, that begins, Sarah, the way I've always taught people, it's really helpful, is just a 3-word little prayer, even if you've never prayed before. 3 little words: sorry, thanks, and please. Jesus, look, I'm sorry that I've messed up. I've done things in my life I'm not proud of. Sorry, I've looked for hope and certainty and joy in all of the wrong places and not made you the center of my life. I'm sorry about that. Thank you for giving your life for me on the cross. Thank you for making it possible for me to have a relationship with God. Thank you for making it possible for me to be forgiven. And then please, would you welcome me into your family, make me one of your children? Would you fill me with your spirit and begin giving me that joy and that peace and that certainty that Andy and Sarah have talked about? Sorry, thanks, and please. That's how Christian life begins. Boy, there's a long journey after that, because it's an exciting adventure. If you've prayed that prayer, reach out, to the folks at Creation Fest. I'm sure Sarah will be happy to hear from you. Reach out to us at SOLAS, tell a friend, and start exploring what that means.
Amazing. I've not heard that one before. Sorry, thanks, and please. I'm going to borrow that in the future.
I borrowed it. So
as we all do with the best to everything. Andy, thanks so much. You've given us so much to think about today. As Andy said, if you today have just responded in some way or just would like to continue on that journey, there's going to be a page posted in the chat. It's just called a What's Next page, and it might help you take next steps in the faith journey. But as you've probably picked up during this conversation with Andy, he's an expert on more than you'll ever realize. So I would also so highly commend to you the SOLAS website and these short videos that have been just phenomenally helpful for me in finding how do I articulate quick answers to hard questions. And Andy, just for those who are tuned in, listening, viewing, is there anything else you want to invite them to engage with? Anything else you want to just nod to?
Yeah, 2 things I would add, Sarah. The first is thank you for the shout out to SOLAS. The other, if you have prayed that prayer that we shared there, sorry, thanks, please, or you're searching and seeking through the Christian faith, 2 great resources to check out. Maybe you'll put these in the links, Sarah, for going further. There's 2 great organizations. One is called Alpha, one is called Christianity Explored. Both those organizations, Alpha and Christianity Explored, run wonderful short little courses where you can discover the Christian faith, ask all kinds of questions. They've done brilliant jobs at moving their stuff online. So you've got no excuse of going, oh, it's coronavirus, I can't do it. Yeah, you can. You can sign up, be part of a small group, and ask your questions, find out more. So Alpha, Christianity Explored. And then the other resource I'd really recommend, if you go to the SOLAS website, we are launching literally tonight a series of webinars. And what we're doing is we're kind of alternating them every other week. 1 week we're doing a training webinar for Christians on how to talk about Jesus to friends and neighbors and colleagues in a way that engages people. And the first one is happening tonight. And then on the alternate weeks, we're going to take a tough question about the Christian faith and answer it, address it, and take people's questions. So if you're a skeptic or a seeker or a doubter, or you've got friends who are, great to invite them to those. And you can find details on the SOLAS webpage. You can watch them on Facebook and Twitter and all this kind of stuff. And obviously, continue to follow what's going on at Creation Fest. You guys are pumping some great resources out.
Well, with the help of many friends. We have so loved, Andy, having you with us. Just a gift as ever. Thank you for your wisdom, for your kindness, and for just bringing to life this really important question. We'll be back again next Wednesday at 4 p.m. and we'll be talking about the question, can I make a difference in the world? And we'll be joined by Esther Swaffield from International Justice Mission, Esther Swaffield Bray, which we're delighted to have her with us. So Andy, thanks so much for being with us, and everyone else who's tuned in, check out those links in the comments, and we will look forward to connecting soon. Bye.
Bye.